So hey Mark,
Hey Tom.
glad we're here
I am too.
together,
Yes, not alone.
not alone. Yeah, doing this thing.
Yeah, doing it together.
Yeah. Do you know that the UK has a minister of loneliness?
No, I did not know that. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, like this person is appointed to minister to all the lonely people in the UK.
That's a really interesting position. I'm not familiar with that, and I like that they call it minister. That's an interesting way to refer to it. So what exactly do they do?
So the minister of loneliness has a hotline that people can call in and leave a message about their own state of being lonely.
That's kind of cool. I'm intrigued by this whole thing.
So Alice Addy did a documentary about this, a short documentary that was called Disconnected. It won some awards, and it's about these phone calls that people call in and leave these messages. And here's a little bit from the trailer.
I would sit in my flat and watch people walk by outside my window and just think, how am I so alone in a place where there are so many people?
Such a vibrant, bursting city full of people, but I feel so lonely. Like I'm the only person who's not with anyone.
The evenings are the hardest. You see people out every night, Instagrams of couples and friends, and you just feel like the whole world's at a party that you weren't invited to.
That was really intriguing to me, and even though it's from the UK, it kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah. If you were going to call in and leave a message on this hotline, if there was one in the United States, what would your message be?
Well, a lot of my life I've struggled with feeling like I'm different and like people don't understand me. And that can lead to really feeling isolated and alone. And the interesting thing about feeling that way is that unless you reach out to people and you explain what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, it self-perpetuates. So I've realized that that's a lie, that you know, I'm not always alone and people can't understand me, but you have to continually reach out. And I think the message there would be a form of reaching out. How about you, Tom?
I think I would talk about how I didn't realize how lonely I was being a pastor until you came on staff. There's this feeling as you're being a pastor of carrying the weight of the mission of the church, the mission of Jesus in this world, in this particular church. And there's a way that I'm all in, and all of a sudden you're all in too. And we're doing this together. And it's definitely one of those moments where 1 + 1 = more than 2.
It does. What if we had a minister of loneliness at Sycamore Creek?
That'd be interesting.
Let's ask people what they'd do if they were the minister of loneliness at Sycamore Creek. So here's our question for discussion. If you were the minister of loneliness at Sycamore Creek, what 1 or 2 things would you do to decrease loneliness? Let's discuss that.
Well, that was a discussion full of a lot of great ideas.
Yeah, and ones that we can start doing right now.
Like everybody could be a minister of loneliness.
Exactly, no seminary degree required.
Today we're in this 3rd week of a series called Unafraid. We're taking a look at the topic of friendless and alone.
Yes, loneliness is becoming a national healthcare crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. After the year we've just been through, it has really tested the strengths and weaknesses of our friendship bonds. In fact, Scientific America reports that 47% of Americans often feel alone, left out, and lacking meaningful connection with others.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
We did our own survey here at Sycamore Creek based on the University of California's loneliness scale.
So what were the results?
Well, our results showed that over 2/3 of people, so 66.666 repeating, right, of people in our survey are lonely most of the time or some of the time. That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. I mean, I was wondering if there would be any difference by being a part of a church, and I don't know what to compare that to, but it would be interesting to find out.
It would be interesting to compare like people who are a part of Sycamore Creek versus people who aren't, and whether are we doing anything to combat loneliness, or do we need this minister of loneliness position?
I hope we are.
I hope we are too. There's a real paradox though about loneliness.
Yeah, Sarah, my marriage therapist, told us at the beginning of the pandemic that the real challenge that couples were facing was being together in the same house, but still alone, together and alone.
Yeah, it's totally possible to be lonely while still having people all around you.
And you can be alone without being lonely.
Exactly, that's a Christian practice of solitude.
Solitude, absolutely. Yeah. And yet the introverts among us, myself included, still need some sort of connection with people.
We do. It's baked into us. It's how God made us.
Tell us more about that, Dr. Offerly.
Well, there's two creations in the first book of the Bible, Genesis. And in the first chapter, God creates everything day by day. And at the end of each day, God declares that everything is
good.
Good. And on the sixth day, God says it is very good. And I love how one translation says this. It says, God saw everything he had made, and it was supremely good.
That's supremely good. Sweet. I like that translation. I hadn't come across that one before.
It's a great translation. So it's all good, right?
Yep, absolutely. All good.
But not so fast.
What?
There's a second creation story.
Second?
And in that second creation, this is crazy that there's two creation stories, isn't it? The second creation story in Genesis 2, it zooms in on the first humans. God creates the first human, and after a day or so of being alive, God makes a very startling declaration.
Startling?
Startling. God says something is not good.
Not good? I thought everything was good. What's not good?
God says it is not good for that first human to be alone. So God says, I will make a helper who is just right for this one.
That's really interesting.
So God makes a helper for Adam. That first helper is Eve.
Does helper mean that Eve is supposed to serve Adam hand and foot?
No, that's not what that means. The same word helper is often applied to God as a helper of Israel.
So no hierarchy at this point in the relationship.
Not at all. A hierarchy only comes in later as a consequence of sin entering the world. Right now, at this point in the story, they're completely egalitarian, equal partners and companions, and they're not alone anymore. And that, not being alone, that's good.
That is good. So this whole companionship thing is baked right into us from the beginning of the biblical story of creation.
Yes, it's part of the way that God made us, and it explains why it's so hard when we feel lonely today.
So I think back to a word that we've been using through this series, catastrophizing or over-catastrophizing.
Oh, that's a great word. It's a good word and a helpful one.
How many possible Scrabble points for that one?
32 points, assuming no multipliers. Although, as a Scrabble player, it would be pretty hard to play because you only have 7 tiles to play.
You have to have catastrophe. No,
the math doesn't work.
Can't do
it's
it.
a lot of letters.
That would have to be house rules where you got more panels.
It would have to be, yeah.
Is that what it's called? Panels?
Tiles.
Tiles.
Yep.
So when we're in a season of loneliness, we over-catastrophize by thinking that this is the way it's always going to be.
Yeah, I don't have any friends right now, so therefore I will never have any friends.
Did you know that famous people have this problem too?
I can imagine it, but yeah, I don't really know any famous people.
Take Anne Hathaway, for example. She said that loneliness is my least favorite thing about life. The thing that I'm most worried about is just being alone without anybody to care for or someone who will care for me.
That's interesting. I don't immediately think that someone who seems to have it all together, like a famous actress like Anne Hathaway, would struggle with loneliness.
Yeah, it is. It's surprising. We tend to think these celebrities have everything with their glamour and good looks. Sarah and I watched a recent Anne Hathaway movie that we really loved called The Intern.
What's that about?
So Robert De Niro plays a senior citizen who signs up for a senior intern program at a startup that Anne Hathaway was the founder of.
That's an interesting premise.
So he does this because he's lonely, and it turns out that she's lonely too.
That sounds like a pretty good plot.
So it was really interesting to Sarah and I because this relationship of this young startup woman and this older senior retired intern they turn out to be friends in this movie.
What really resonates with me as you talk about that as the storyline is that Robert De Niro doesn't fall into this cycle that I think so many of us fall into.
What's that?
Well, it's the cycle that I kind of mentioned earlier that I can wrestle with. It's that when we feel lonely, we withdraw from other people. And then what happens in the midst of that is we become really isolated, and we sort of create this downward spiral of loneliness and isolation, and it leads to more loneliness and isolation, and we just go within ourselves.
Yeah, that I know that feeling.
Yes, and this has really bad consequences for our health. Researchers have found that chronic long-term loneliness has an equivalent impact on our physical well-being as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
15 cigarettes a day?
15 cigarettes a day, and shortening our lives by 15 years.
We are literally dying of loneliness, Mark.
Yep, we are.
So what's made this epidemic of loneliness happen?
I think there are a lot of factors that could contribute to it, but if we think back 100 years, pretty much everyone was born somewhere. I mean, that's obviously true, right? We were all born somewhere, but then they stayed in that place. Yes, they stayed in that place, and they grew up, they went to school, they worked, they retired, and they died all in the same area. But now it's changed. Now the average American will move 11.7 times during their lifetime.
Yeah, that rings true for me. Let me think for a minute about how many times I moved. I was born in Indianapolis, moved to Chicago for first grade, back to Indianapolis. I moved so many times I'm having a hard time
remembering them.
Back to Indianapolis, then
out to California, back to Indianapolis, to another side of Indianapolis, to Wheaton College, to Wheaton, back and forth between Wheaton and Indianapolis for the summers, then up to Petoskey, where Sarah and I married, then across town in Petoskey, then off to Durham, North Carolina for seminary, then to Richmond, Virginia for an internship, back to Durham, back to Petoskey for a season, back to Durham, and then to Lansing.
And I've been in Lansing for the longest season of my life. For 12 years, I've lived in the same house.
Wow, that's a lot of moving, Tom. And my experience has been totally different. I've moved maybe a handful of times, and I've really just lived in 2 different areas.
Yeah, when I add it all up, I've moved 15 times.
Whoa, 15 times. That's a lot of moving.
Yeah, every time I move, it disrupts my relationships. And I think, I'll keep up these good friendships that I have, but it's nearly impossible.
It's hard to do.
I haven't been able to do that. So I told you we've lived in the parsonage now for 12 years. It's the longest place we've ever lived. And what's ended up happening is we've developed these pretty significant friendships with neighbors. In fact, our kids, they have the same friends that they've had for their entire life. Even our youngest went to daycare 3 houses down from where we live. And all of the kids of that family are friends. And it's this amazing, diverse, stable neighborhood community. My kids are growing up a totally different way than I did.
Yeah, the stability makes a big difference. And today only 24% of Americans will stay in the same town for their entire life. And I think what we see is a lack of rootedness, a lack of connection contributes to our loneliness.
3/4 of the United States will move away from where they grew up.
They will.
Wow. So take into account then jobs. I mean, we used to keep one job for our whole lives, but now younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, are being told that they have to move jobs every 2 to 3 years to stay competitive.
That's a lot of moving.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our next question for discussion. We want you to chat about this right in the chat box. How many times have you moved, and how many different jobs have you had? Let's discuss that.
So we're not actually there yet, but retirement does the same thing.
It does.
You've got all of these relationships with people that you've spent 8 hours a day with, and they're gone.
They are. The greatest indicator of happiness in retirement, it's not your 401k.
Okay.
It's not the number of sunny days that you might enjoy during retirement.
Okay.
It's not even the number of golf rounds that you might enjoy.
Well, that's good because I'm not really a golfer.
It's meaningful relationships
Yeah.
that determine the happiness that people have during retirement. It's the friendships that you develop and then you stick with over time.
So you're saying we should put as much time into investing in our relationships as we do into our retirement plan.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we've dissected this problem enough.
I agree. Let's turn to some solutions. What do we do about this?
So what does the mental health community, counseling, therapy, have to offer for loneliness?
Well, psychology has helped us to understand more and more the root causes of our situations, and they often go back to our family of origin.
So my parents divorced when I was in elementary school, about the age of my kids right now, which has created this kind of thing in me where I am always worried about, are people going to leave? And that really wreaks havoc on me as a pastor at times, worried about whether people are going to leave. And of course they do from the church. Well, you never know, right?
You never know. Yeah.
How about you, Mark?
I can relate to that. I have similar issues with trust and with people leaving. At the same time, another family of origin thing that I struggle with is I grew up in Grand Rapids in this sort of West Michigan Dutch reserved culture. You don't show strong emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You don't show that you need help from anyone. And I definitely wrestle with both of those things. And it goes back to my upbringing in that area.
Yeah. So a good therapist is often going to go back to your family of origin and kind of explore that with you and help you look at what from your family of origin are you replicating in your relationships now or your lack of relationships.
Yeah, a good therapist is going to help you break that cycle of catastrophizing. We can take our own filter and we can project it onto those around us. And just an example of that, you text someone and they don't text back for a long time.
Yeah.
What happens then is you start to assume the worst. You start to think that maybe they don't like you or there's something wrong with your relationship. And in reality, maybe they just didn't see the text or they didn't have time to reply.
Yeah. So it reminds me when I was a teenager and there was this girl that I really liked and I sent her flowers one day because I'm that kind of guy.
Okay.
And she didn't call. And pretty soon I was a miserable wreck. My dad tried to console me and he tried to say, well, maybe she just wasn't home yet. And I was having none of that. I was like, she doesn't like me. That
sounds miserable.
It was miserable.
So what happened?
So at 9 p.m. she called. She had been away for the entire day. She just got back. She just saw the flowers and she was calling to thank me for them.
Wait a minute. So your dad was right?
Yeah, fortunately he was.
Oh, man. So I think a good therapist is kind of like your dad. They'll help you see the other ways that you can think about things in your life.
Yeah, I was thinking about something your wife, who is a counselor, often says.
She's a psychologist.
Yeah. She talks about positive event planning. A good therapist is going to help you think about what events you plan and where you can create those friendships in clubs or groups.
Yeah, things too, like where can you volunteer your time and not only make a difference, but also make some new friends.
Yeah, this is all about investing in relationships right now, like maybe you are in your 401k.
Absolutely. That brings us to our next question for discussion. Where can you find and build relationships? Let's discuss that. I think it's a good time to mention that we have a counselor who we work with through our church, Damaris Garcia.
Damaris.
Yes.
Yeah, and thanks to the generosity of our church, our Christmas challenge every year to give away as much as you spend at Christmas, we're able to provide resources for people to see Damaris if their insurance doesn't cover it.
Yeah, Damaris is trained not only as a limited licensed counselor, she's also trained in a seminary, which is super helpful. And so she can integrate faith into her counseling.
Yeah, such a resource. She's also bilingual, so she can do counseling in English and Spanish.
We have a treasure trove of resources that we have available to us that can help us to combat loneliness.
As well as the treasure trove of our faith, the Bible.
Our faith, yes.
Full of resources for loneliness.
Yeah, this is a central concern, I think, of the Bible. We see in there a community of people who are, a community that are both with people and a community with God.
At the heart of the Bible is the basic truth that even if everybody else abandons us, God is with us.
So the Bible really offers two answers to the problem of loneliness. The first answer is the community of God, the church, and the second is a personal relationship with God in Jesus.
Let's talk about the church first.
That's our specialty, talking about that.
It is.
Good idea.
Jesus said that our love for one another is going to be the key way that people know that we're his followers, his disciples, his apprentices. Our love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples.
The church is essentially a laboratory of love where we learn to love one another even when it's hard.
Yeah, I think people really stumble right here at this point.
How so?
They assume that if you show up for a worship service in person or online, that this relationship, this community is going to happen.
It doesn't?
Nope. Worship is like a communal gathering where we get oriented to the stories of our faith, but it's not the primary place where relationships happen. That's somewhere else.
I think I get where you're going now.
I knew you would, because this is like your favorite part of ministry, of
It
church.
is. Small groups.
Yeah. So why don't you take us there?
Okay. Small groups are where we meet people. They're where we can build healthy spiritual friendships that make a huge difference in our lives.
And sometimes this doesn't even happen in small groups. You have to take it a step further. Like, small group is where you meet somebody that you want to get together with for a drink of coffee or beer or something, and where you develop that friendship and you begin to kind of do the deep parts of life together.
It's a weird way to describe it, but it's almost like friendship dating.
Yeah, and it takes some intentionality.
It doesn't just happen by accident.
But the first step is joining a small group, which is what we're all about right now. In fact, today is the last day to join our fall church-wide campaign of small groups, where all of our small groups are reading this book, Unafraid, by Adam Hamilton. People can join a small group by going to sycamorecreekchurch.org/small groups, or by following the QR code that's on the screen right now.
Don't miss this. Joining a small group could add 15 years to your life.
15 years, yeah, good point.
Our next question for discussion is, what small group can you join this semester? Or what's been your experience with small groups in the past? Let's discuss that.
Small groups are so important, but I want to go back for a moment to worship.
Yeah, let's do that.
In the same way that joining a small group requires some intentionality to build friendships, to kind of combat this feeling of being alone, worship takes some intentionality too for connecting with other people and with God.
And that's been a little harder to do this past year.
Yeah, I know. It's been really hard.
So how do we do it now?
One thing I've noticed is that there's a lot more people online who are watching than who are engaging in the comments. And so a simple way to connect with people is to simply like or comment on something that they've commented on. Don't just passively watch worship. Engage with people in the worship service.
So that's online. What about in person?
Well, 510 Lincoln.
Explain that.
I thought you'd ask that. 5 means the 5 minutes before the service starts or the 5 minutes after the service starts. Pay attention to the people around you that you don't know, like within 10 feet of you. You don't have to do the whole room. So that's the 5 and the 10. And then link up with them. And extra bonus points if you can link them up with somebody else that you do know in the room.
So we've been exploring the first answer that the Bible gives us to combat loneliness. It's the community of Christ. It's the church. What's the second thing again?
A personal relationship with Jesus.
That sounds like Jesus is maybe supposed to be your boyfriend or something. That's a little weird way to put it, isn't
It does kind of sound like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if you don't like that phrase, and there's good reasons not to,
There are.
let's try a different phrase. Practicing the presence of God.
Tell me more about that.
A fundamental part of the story of God in the Bible is that God is not an unresponsive, passive God. God is actively seeking out to be present with us, to be present with you and me and with each individual here, present with us together as a community.
So no matter what, we are never truly alone.
I think of my favorite psalm, Psalm 139, which says, "Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast."
Or earlier in that same psalm where it says, "Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely."
God knows your thoughts. Your thoughts. Our thoughts. And yet God still loves us.
In our series recently on St. Augustine, he is most famous for saying, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds rest in thee."
Or our series on the Lord's Prayer, where we looked at the phrase, "Our Father who art in heaven," "Our Father who art in the atmosphere." God is big enough, transcendent enough to hold the whole universe in God's hands, and close enough as the air that we breathe.
So we can use our imagination, and we can imagine you will never be loved. You will never have friends. You will always be lonely.
Or we can use our imagination that God always loves you. God is with you. The church is there for you. You are not alone.
That's a great way to end. Let's go back to Psalm 139 and let's use it as a closing prayer. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. Amen.
Amen. That's a wrap.